Marriage. Such a wonderful concept, isn't it? A sacred bond between two human beings, an oath two people take to live together, sharing every moment, to show affection and look after each other, have sex within the sanctity of marriage, while Sky Daddy washes them, and perhaps even procreate if they so wish, or something like that anyway. I don't fucking know, I'm not married. When you think of marriage, regardless of your background and belief system, your picture is going to be most likely within the same ballpark of what I just said a few seconds ago, which is one of the very few good things about Egypt, except it's fucking not. Why else would I be making this video? Let's try to take an organized approach to this matter. What even pushes someone to seek out marriage? Why would anyone bother dating? Why invest into someone else with no guarantees? Typically, one or more of the following reasons. 1. Romance. You know, most humans don't enjoy being lonely. 2nd, the primal instinct to pass on your genes for the survival of the species and continuation of your bloodline, which goes under the much cuter name of paternal instincts. 3. To carry your legacy. 4. To look after you when you are old and start turning to a fossil, which is a selfish motive, but whatever. 5. Religious beliefs. As far as I know, the main 3 tell their people to procreate, which is why you notice that the more religious families have more children. Now, let's see in Egypt. Romance is fucking dead. In a society where you are not even allowed to hold a girl's hand or hug her, let alone get to know each other until you are already married, romance has no place here. Of course, some lucky couples find theirs after the fact, but I wouldn't say that is the general rule, unfortunately. Legacy, well, I mean, just look at our names. You're given a name at birth, and that is yours. Everything else is your ancestry, basically. Your dad's name, then his dad's name, and so on. Until a certain point, which I still have no clue what the basis of his determination is, but I do know that you can end up walking around with anywhere from 4 upwards of 10 of your ancestors' names attached to yours. The last one of which is the family name, and yes, it's always the dad's chain of names. You could legally change it to your mother's, but the default is the father. If that doesn't scream, I want my name to last for generations to come through this person I have created, I don't know what does. Religious beliefs, I mean, duh, it's a religious society. But really, the main motives are to have sex, as you are not allowed to do that outside of marriage, and to make babies. Adoption is forbidden in Islam and thus illegal here, so if you want kids, you have to make them yourself. I really want to make a joke about how homemade is better. And besides, adoption anyway is not really a consideration here. Everyone just wants to get married, fuck, and make a bunch of babies because that's the status quo, that's just what you do. But how do you fucking marry someone without falling in love with them or even getting to know them first? Marriage here is arranged between the potential husband and the girl's parents. In some cases, the girl herself doesn't even get a say in it, actually. It's pretty much a business deal where the man buys off the woman from her parent, literally. There's something called mahr, which is basically an amount of money determined by the girl's parents, which the man pays the girl's family to marry her. A price tag on their daughter, if you will. I'll give more details on it later in this series, but this is all you need to know for now. Arranged marriage can happen with no previous knowledge between the couple of each other. The guy can just know the family is respected and shit, and so he wants to marry from their household. Or he just saw their daughter somewhere and he liked her and asks around till he finds out her parents' address and goes to meet them. And in some cases it's even planned so early on by the couple's parents before they're even grown-ups. Two families can be close to each other and so plan for their children to be married when they grow up and raise them towards that goal. Not saying this is a super common thing, but it definitely is a thing nonetheless, which is fucked up, to be honest. Imagine having your whole life planned for you from birth by your parents, whom you might not even grow to like that much, and you have no opinion on it whatsoever. And on that note, let me let you in on a little secret. Egyptians marry their cousins. Now, let's talk about that checklist. I want to point out just how much is expected of the guy financially to seal the deal. Aside from the initial price tag, which is mahr, picture this. You're a guy, fresh college graduate, with a shitty starter job that just barely gets you by at all. You see a girl, and you like her, and you want to get to know her. Eventually, you get to meet the girl's family. They low-key like you because you're such a nice and handsome young man. You start talking business. They expect you to have a house or apartment for their daughter to move into, have a steady income to provide for her and her future kids, get the rings, and something else called shapka, which is like an expensive ass gift the guy gets her. And finally, they're gonna want mahr. Of course, the details vary. This isn't like a template form that every single guy has to fill out, but it is always gonna be generally something like this. The girl's family do provide furniture for their new home and some other stuff, of which they make a list to keep record in case of separation later on. But don't feel too bad for the guy, because although the financial load is mostly his, he gets so much more freedom and rights than the woman in marriage, and even control over her, but that's a topic for another video. Now, this system is a problem for two main reasons. How the fuck is a guy supposed to have all of this when he just graduated? It's very unfair and unnecessary of an expectation. Why not let the couple start their lives together and build something from the ground up for both of them? No, because that would be wholesome and would develop meaningful and romantic relations between the two, and we don't do that here. The second reason, this mentality creates a dependence barrier for women. Some ignorant families don't even let their girls study and work and just send her off to a man to marry later. And if she doesn't like him, well, she can either get a divorce and find another man, or go back to her father's home. Either way, she's put in a position where she has to live off of someone else, a man. And women who do break that mold and live independently are regarded as rebellious and probably sluts, because there's definitely no reason to eschew from marriage in a twisted, misogynistic society like this, other than wanting to hoe around. And this whole gig actually has created a new, more sinister motivation to marry and have kids, which is to have girls to sell later. Technically, your daughter is an investment that pays out eventually, and this mindset may have, in some way or another, contributed to another very serious issue, the one this video is about. This is not clickbait. This video so far has been just surface level information just to set the scene for this. It is normalized here for a lot of people, but why? You can't possibly have an entire population be born with that defect. The odds are nowhere near that high. So how did it come to this? I'll let you guess for a bit. It's Islam. The Prophet married one of his 11 wives when she was only 6. In his defense though, he didn't have sex with her until she was 9. That last bit was sarcasm. That doesn't make it any better, especially considering that he was over 50 at the time of the fact. So, the disorder that is causing this phenomenon is not actually itself. It's just nurtured through religion and society normalizing it. I mean, when the protagonist of your religion married a literal child, why wouldn't you? Right? That's literally the most commonly used argument when they defend. I bet to some of you this is hard to believe, so I brought proof with me. As fate would have it, recently this guy, Amra Adib, said some shit on this and it stirred things up. Before we get into it though, let me just say that, no, I don't follow this guy. He's a moron, and most of his views are questionable at best. But let's not fall into logical fallacies here. When a moron says something based, we hear him out. Rejecting something for its source alone is dumb. Okay? Cool. So, he said, the girl who is 13 or 14 is mentally and biologically not ready. Even some girls at 22 and 23 still struggle on their first night and are scared of it. So how would a 13-year-old be? Basic shit, right? The fact that someone has to say this alone is very concerning for this society, but it gets even worse. Let's see how the people responded to this. I'm going to talk regarding religion alone. Marriage in Islam has no determined age. Rather, it depends on the build of the girl and her ability to endure the requirements of marriage, from mating, bearing the responsibility of a family, and raising children. In some environments, a girl matures into a woman and is completely prepared for marriage before she even reaches 10. In short, if the girl's father marries her to someone when she is 13 or 14, but still a child mentally and physically, the father and anyone enabling it have sinned. And the opposite is true. If a girl is 13 or 14 and have matured into a woman and is ready to take on the responsibilities of marriage, she can go ahead. When she matures, I'll let you know. They use the term mature here a lot, meaning be ready to marry and breed, in case it's confusing to you. This one is hardly even coherent, but I think he's trying to say, and what do you say to the hadith, quotes from the Prophet, that says, let them marry at 8 on my responsibility? Again, I'm not sure if this is a correct translation because the Arabic text itself doesn't make much sense. It's about the girl herself. One could be 40 and still innocent, ignorant, and irresponsible. And another could be 13 or and have a strong, daring character. able to bear responsibility. Why are you generalizing? The Prophet married Aisha when she was 9, and nobody tell me girls matured faster back then and all that dumb talk. Isn't he our role model, or what?
Are you fucking kidding me?
It differs with time and location. There are 13-year-old girls whose raising an environment in which they grew and lived gives them the ability to bear responsibility. And there are other environments where the girl can be graduated from college, aka over 20, and still a failure at bearing responsibility. Marriage in Islam is not by age, it's by capabilities. Brother, a girl is biologically a woman. As long as she reached puberty, she won't differ from any woman. If it's not your specialty, don't talk about it. This one is also on a rant, but I have to show you the end part of it. He quotes the Quran and then goes to explain it, meaning the girl before menstruation age can be married, no problem. Curse this secular stream that wants to tear down Islam. Let that barrage of degeneracy sink in for a bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think my brain just committed suicide.
These are grown-ass men and women, by the way, defending sending off minors to get married. Only females, of course. We live among these creatures. People who would or have already fucked literal children, prepubescent even. And sure, the argument could be made that some girls can be ready for sex before they reach the legal age, and some even actually do it. Listen, the age limit is not a law of physics, and it even varies across country, but you must draw the line somewhere where she is guaranteed to be ready. Besides, there's a difference between a teenager banging another teenager and a creepy old gross man in his 30s or whatever doing it. The worst part is that disputing this disgusting shit is grounds for arrest under contempt of religions charges, or lynching, whichever gets you first, I suppose, or both, probably. And it actually has happened before to someone from a group of Muslims who are not as fucked in the head. They were on a mission to create a more modern, civilized version of Islam, which had them trying to deny the fact that the Prophet married a literal child and piece together any form of evidence to say that she was in fact 18. While this is falsification of facts, I think it's ultimately a noble mission, trying to fix this rot in this society without clashing too hard with its core beliefs. A main figure from that group, Islam al-Bihiri, got arrested for it. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for trying to denormalize. Some court work and appeals later, he ended up with 1 year in prison, which is significantly less bad for him. But the fact that attacking gets you into legal trouble at all is just goddamn disgraceful. And for the record, this shit was not normal in Egypt until the Islamization wave took over. There is even a vintage movie which shows this. It's called صغير على الحب, or Too Young for Love. I was recommended it by a friend for this video, and so I went ahead and watched it. The movie is basically about a woman who pretends to be a minor for an audition. She ends up falling in love with the director she's working with. She then introduces her actual self to him later as the young girl's older sister and guardian, and she tries to get him to love her. I'm not gonna bore you with the details, but in one scene, this guy, her fiancé, gets slammed for treating this supposed young girl as her adult self and trying to kiss her. Forcibly.
يا خبر اجازه تلج ارمي كده على بعض.
اختي كريمه في اسكندريه سافرت النهارده.
وهترجع امتى؟
مش عارفه يا ابي ما قالتليش.
يبقى مستحيل ترجعي البيت وتقعدي مع الوحش ده لوحدك.
انا مش لوحدي، معايا دادا عزيزه في البيت.
خلاص يبقى اقدر اطمن عليكي. يلا بينا اوصلك.
يلا. واحد مراهق زيك يبوس طفله زيي في مكان عام؟
انا خطيبك ومن حق ابوسك في اي زمان ومكان.
يا سلام، انت لازم تجرب عقلك حاجه، انا لا يمكن اقعد معاك في البيت ده بعد كده ابدا.
انا بحبك لحظه واحده من فضلك.
انا قلت لك مش ممكن اسيبك في بيت واحد مع الوحش ده مجنون. تاني مره النهارده بيترزق عليك.
And in the end, he gets arrested for kidnapping a minor and trying to marry her.
انت متهم بخطف بنت قاصر.
هي فين دي؟ دي كلها قصر؟ دي شابه وعروسه وكلها كام ساعه وهنبقى جوز بعض.
يعني كنت هترتكب جريمه تانية. تتجوز قاصر ازاي؟ يا فندم دي ما حصلتش السن القانوني.
ما تصدقش الكلام ده يا حضره الظابط.
كده؟ طب اقلعي البلطو. اتفضل.
في بنت كبيرة تلبس هدوم بالشكل ده؟
يا فندم ده هدوم أونطة، هدوم تمثيل.
عمرك كام سنة يا شاطر؟
11 سنة.
11 سنة؟ هتاكلي من عمرك 10 سنين حتة واحدة. انطقي بالحقيقة أنا أحدفك من تحت القطر ده.
حشاني يا بنت كمان حشاني.
انت ورايا انا لازم ابوظ خلقتك زي ما بوظت جوازتي.
قلتوا على المكتب.
حاضر يا فندم. ليه؟ انا عملت ايه؟
خطفت بنت قاصر.
حلوه يا حلوه يا اموره.
اضحكي يا ننود.
عشان اسمعك ونبتدي البروفات.
Egyptian cinema has always served as a projection of society, and to have a movie show this as unacceptable, disgusting behavior through the other characters being repulsed by it and stopping it, even punching this guy, tells us something. And even it being punchable by law, this was our society back then. Not that long ago either. Now, it is legal and normal to marry and knock up children, and you can even get arrested for not accepting it or trying to deny it. How the times have changed. Back to girls being sold off ASAP. If you think about it, it makes sense in a twisted, sick way. The sooner you can cash out your investment, aka daughter, the better. In some cases, it's the only option actually, if you're too poor to raise children. In which case, fuck you for even making them, and I hope you I probably can't say that. I'll edit it out. However, I don't even believe for a second that this fuckery counts as marriage. I believe that there is a more appropriate term for it. Let's be real, most Egyptians have always known this existed here, to some extent, despite their denial of it. However, after doing some research into it for this video, I learned that it goes way deeper than I thought. So much that it warrants an episode of its own, actually. Most reliable sources I could find are a bit dated, sadly, considering that since the revolution in 2011, freedom of speech ceased to exist pretty much, and there is no proper unbiased research or documentation of any kind about anything here anymore. Only propaganda. But, and this is just my speculation, I can only imagine that this has gotten worse, seeing how poverty, the main motive behind human trafficking, has drastically increased. The value of our currency has dropped to almost 1/5 of what it was 11 years ago. So I guess this is now a series, and for part 2 I will be commenting on a documentary made by Al Jazeera that I found on this topic. Subscribe and turn on notifications if you don't want to miss it. That being said, I love you all so much, and until next time, take care.